Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI, as well as the NFL senior writer on SI, and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. It's great to be with you. We're joined by my good buddy from the Men's Journal, terrific journalist. He has been with me for so long, each and every week. He's talking writing sports all the time at mensjournal.com. As you know, I cover the league and he takes it from a little bit of a different perspective. That's why we love having him in each and every week to talk about all things NFL. The one and only, the great Matt Hladek. Matt, tell them real quick. If they want to follow you, they can go to mensjournal.com, but they can also find you on X. Tell them where to find you, please.
Sure, you can find me at Matt Hladek 919 at MATTHLADIK 919, and you can just chop it up with me there. And I'm always talking some ball and down to meet and discuss things with new people all the time.
Matt, we're going to start digging in with the Raiders. We always start with the Raiders, end with the Raiders. And I want to talk about the frustration of Raider Nation. For over 2 decades, this franchise has told them, just win, baby, and they haven't. Their only consistency has been inconsistency. Mark Davis, in my opinion, is doing everything to fix that. And I greatly admire the fact that there's no ego on the table with him. He just wants to fix the problem. That being said, when you look at Geno Smith, 2 home games, 3 interceptions each game. The offensive line was outstanding on Sunday. 2 plays by DJ Glaze that weren't good. 1 play by Jordan Meredith. Both of them very young players, haven't even played an entire season yet. That's totally acceptable. But they lost that game because of Geno. The offense was exceptional. Ashton Ginty was exceptional. And to be sitting here in game 1 versus the Patriots, he looked like a top 2 quarterback in the NFL. In games 2 and 4, he looked like a bottom 5. And in game 3, he looked like a top 5 quarterback. I understand that you can't just judge after 4 games, but Geno Smith, being the long in the tooth veteran who has openly bragged publicly about his contract being the big bucks, so that's not, you know me, you've known me a long time, I don't bring up players' contracts. But when they're openly bragging about it, that becomes germane and fair ground. He's got to play better, period. I think he will, but talk about Geno Smith.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've been surprised at some of the struggles that Geno's had so far this year. Listen, he's a guy who he did throw 15 picks last year. He threw 11 in 2022 when he had a breakout season with the Seahawks. So he's not going to be a guy who, you didn't expect him to be a guy who was going to throw 6, 7 interceptions the whole season. The way like Aaron Rodgers used to, or Mahomes, guys like that. But I do think back-to-back 3-pick games or I shouldn't say back-to-back 3-pick home games and 7 interceptions in the first 4 games of the year. It's alarming because listen, I do think I expected him to play more consistently and play better through the first month of the season with the Raiders because I thought that was one of the biggest upgrades they had other than Pete Carroll as a head coach was bring him in as a quarterback. I do think he's capable of playing better. I do think he will play better.
I do too.
But I understand where Raider fans are like, what's going on here? Because you have a guy who is basically halfway at his interception total from last year at the quarter pole of the 2025 season only. So, it's definitely a little bit of cause for concern or a major cause for concern. And it's worth monitoring over the next few weeks. I don't think there's a quarterback controversy. I don't think they're looking to pull him, anything like that. No. But if he continues to play like this, then he's going to be a major detriment to them turning things around, which is not what you expected.
So let me go back. I agree with you. There is no quarterback controversy. And I don't think there should be 4 games in. When you have 2 games where he looked like a top 2 and a top 5 and 2 where he looked like a bottom 5. But he's got to be consistent. I was asked on a national interview before the year how many interceptions I thought Geno would throw in 2025, and I said 17. So he's very close to halfway there at the quarter pole. Good point on your call. Good call on your point. But to me, I I love the way he's responded. Okay? No excuse. All on me. When he played great, and he played great in Washington, and they got destroyed because the offensive line was terrible. Pete Carroll comes out, takes all the blame, which is what Pete does. It's what a head coach should do. And he's like, no, it's on me. Well, it wasn't on him, but I understand why Raider fan is so mad. I get it. But I'm not a fan. I'm an objective journalist. And I'm not going to throw a guy away after 4 games when I think he's a top 10 to 15 quarterback. And I'm basing that based upon what people in the league told me. And if he's that, okay, I'm waiting to look at the trend. I'm going to judge him in November, not in September. Where am I wrong?
No, I think you do have to wait and see what happens with the total encapsulation of what he does this year. Because I think that it's a little too early to judge, but I understand why fans are frustrated because you did expect better to start from him. But I do think this is a guy who, listen, he's had 3 good years in a row where he's looked like a top half of the league quarterback, top 10 to 15 range, like we said. So I think you need to see what he has moving forward, see if he can self-correct and start to play better. I think one of the biggest frustrations of the Raider fans is when you look at the last 3 weeks on the season, they're 1-3, and those 2 home games especially were winnable games.
Yep.
And you're thinking that if you go on the road and beat New England in week 1, you're thinking we're at least, we should at least get one of these next 3 games, be 2-2 after the first month, kind of sitting, in a decent spot, and you lose all 3. And he played really poorly in the 2 very most winnable games of that stretch. So that's where I think a lot of the understandable frustration for fans comes into play.
So I asked Pete Carroll a question after the game. And I'm going to go back and I want to say this. I do not believe there's a quarterback controversy. Gino has to play better. I'm not pretending that his play's been acceptable. I'm just telling you, I don't think there's a controversy after 4 games. But they changed their play calling after the 3rd interception. And my point was, okay, you saw how he's performing that game. If you're going to change your play calling, give Kenny Pickett the shot. I'm not saying you make a quarterback change for the season, but I would have put Kenny Pickett in there specifically because if I'm going to change my game plan, then go with the guy who trained all week with the game plan, which would have been Kenny. Pete said that he didn't think now was the time to have considered it. Do you think I was wrong for saying I would have tried Kenny Pickett on that last drive?
I would not have tried Kenny Pickett on that last drive because I just think it's a really tough place to insert a guy who has not played, and he's cold off the bench. He hasn't played in a game yet this year. Obviously, he's preparing to play. He started in the NFL before. It's not like it's a rookie who's never taken a snap. But I think you have to roll with Gino there. I would not have put Kenny Pickett in on that final series. I do think looking forward, and again, like I said, I don't believe there's a quarterback controversy, anything of the sort there. But if Gino continues to play poorly, do you think about putting Kenny Pickett in midway through a game if Gino's struggling, or do you think about trying some different things there to jumpstart things? I think that's fair. I just don't think I would have done it late in the game last Sunday.
All right, I want to go back because I want to re-reference my question because I think you missed a big detail that I said. And if you didn't miss it and you just disagreed, I'm good with that. But I said they changed their play calling. And my point was, if I was the head coach, I would have rolled with Gino. I would not have changed my play calling. But if you're going to change your play calling, then I go with Kenny there. That was my point. Again, I would have told Gino, go out, roll the dice, let's go. You're my guy. But if I'm not going to do that, if I'm going to tell Chip, or Chip's going to say, hey, we should probably change our play calling here because this is a winnable game, then that's to me where they had to go Kenny. Do you still disagree?
I understand. No, I understand where you're coming from. I just think that my guess is Pete Carroll, she trusts Gino. He's worked with him before. He's probably thinking long term, I don't want to. I'm sticking with the guy who's played the whole game and he can get through it. And we don't want to cause, extra, storyline or anything like that. So I think he's probably weighing the whole long term there. I understand where you're coming from. I get it. I just think I probably would have done the same thing Pete Carroll did in that situation.
Let's give Pete total credit here. He's forgotten more about football than I know. So I'm not sitting here trying to pridefully elevate myself above Pete Carroll. I know what I would have done. That's why I made that point. Let's turn to Ashton. I've told you all off season this kid was going to be special. And now let's not pretend they were playing the Chargers or the Commanders defensive line. They weren't. They were playing the Bears, which are a woeful team. But he looked like everything I told you I thought he was going to be. What was your impression?
Listen, I think anybody who, saw him play in college knows what he's capable of. And I think that obviously there was concern when a guy doesn't come in right away and set the world on fire from a running back perspective. And it wasn't all his fault, the first couple of games. The run blocking, wasn't what it needed to be. And no matter how good you are as a running back, if your offensive line isn't performing, your production is going to be stunted a little bit. But I think it was great to see the explosiveness, the big plays, him going over 100 yards, obviously the first time in his career, finding the end zone 3 different times, twice as a receiver too. So you see the full gamut of what he's capable of. I think he's going to be fine. I think that, they are going to have to continue to get good line play around him. And if this personnel group with the line isn't good enough, they're going to obviously have to continue to improve that to maximize Ashton Ginty. But I think Ashton Ginty has all the requisite tools to be very good in the NFL. I think you saw that start to manifest on Sunday.
Let's talk about, Colton Miller goes down and they're replacing him with the veteran Stone Forsythe. There's a lot of criticism among Raider fans that they're not replacing him with the rookie Charles Grant out of William and Mary, who shows a lot of promise. But I'm telling you, and I reported this all off season, he ain't ready. And so they're going with a veteran over putting a guy in there who's just not ready. I think he will be. I think he has potential to be really, really good. I think he has potential to eventually replace Colton when Colton leaves. He's not there today. They're still trying to win. I'm all for playing rookies when rookies are ready. I'm not for playing rookies when they're not. So I support the franchise here. I think this is the right decision, but a lot of criticism. I'd love your thoughts.
I think there's always the case of you want to see the young guy and you want to see the unproven commodity, the unknown commodity there. And Stone Forsythe, he's played, 4 years with Seattle, was in camp with the Giants this summer, so he's not quite a journeyman yet, but he's a veteran guy. But this is his third team, so he's on his way to journeyman status. And, he's mostly been a backup, but he has made some starts. So there's nothing really sexy about, that guy filling in for one of the better left tackles in the game. And it's obviously you're concerned anytime, Colton Miller is not playing. But I understand you don't necessarily want to just throw a young kid in there because here's the thing. Stone Forsythe is not Colton Miller. He's not going to be as good as Colton Miller, and that's pretty obvious. But Stone Forsythe, you think as a veteran, has been through the wars. He's been through, he's seen a lot. He's played in 50-something games, double-digit starts. But you think about a rookie, third-round rookie, you can ruin a player early or kind of really crush their confidence if you're playing them when they're really not ready to go. And if you put this kid in, if Colton Miller's out for a little bit and Stone Forsythe really struggles and then they go to the rookie kid, I think that's a little easier. If you put this kid in right away and he's just not ready. He's not doing what he's supposed to, or you could really shake a guy's confidence, and it could hurt him long term. So I understand erring on the side of caution here and going with a veteran in the immediate future. And I think you reevaluate depending on how long Colt Miller's out and depending on how Stone Forsythe does.
Yeah, totally agree with you 100%. All right, I want to switch and talk about Shadur Sanders. He's a lightning rod, and he brings a lot of it on himself. In the interest of full disclosure, I really like him a lot as a human being. I think he's just a terrific kid. I think he has some talent. I think it is not his fault, the hype machine that surrounded him. I think it is his fault how he's responded to that hype machine. But he goes out and does a press conference this week in which he doesn't talk. And he took a ton of criticism for not being mature and whatever. But the point was, he had gotten criticism from Rex Ryan to shut your mouth. And so he was kind of having fun with it. And I don't think he's trying to show up Dylan Gabriel. I think he's a young kid, and we don't want kids to grow up anymore. We expect them, just because they're pro football players, to be adults. I had no problem with what he did. I didn't think he was a first-round quarterback. I reported that throughout the process. None of the people I trust thought he was. But I don't hate the kid either. I just think people love to take shots at people. And to me, I think taking a shot at him there is just trying to get clicks or trying to prove you have the hot take. I have no issue with what he did. Please let me know what you think.
It was certainly bizarre looking and funny to watch, but I understand that there was a point behind it related to the Rex Ryan comments. And I think the whole situation just kind of illustrates how crazy the Shadur Sanders thing has become. We're talking about a rookie 5th-round pick who's a third-string quarterback. And, if it's not typical that you see somebody who, when the starter gets benched and the number 2 quarterback takes over, very rarely does the number 3 quarterback get interviewed, unless they are bumped up to backup, which he wasn't. Very rarely do you see the 3rd-string quarterback get interviewed much in those situations, because they're not expected to play. And listen, do I think there's a possibility he plays this year, even though the Browns have said they didn't want him to play this year? Sure, there's definitely a possibility because, it's the Browns, and a few years ago when they made the playoffs, they played 5 or 6 different quarterbacks. Things happen. And maybe fan pressure or outside pressure to see the kids in action, becomes too much to ignore. But I just think it's a weird situation because, and some of it, the attention he brought upon himself, obviously, by being a Sanders and being, the draft saga and all that stuff. But it's weird because no 3rd-string quarterback is getting asked about it, the backup replacing the starter, when they're staying the 3rd-string guy, and he was. So it's just a situation that's just totally unique for the most part to the Browns at this point.
100% agree. All right, I'm going to flip the tables on you a little bit. The Eagles and the Bills, I think you could make an argument because they're the only undefeated teams. Many people think they are the best teams. I think Buffalo is, if I had to pick today. I think Philly is among a handful. I think most of the NFC, they are a terrible matchup. I think there's a couple teams in the NFC they need to be afraid of because of matchups. And I would think Philly would beat Buffalo in a game. So I think there's 2 or 3 teams in the NFC that I could argue would be better. I think Buffalo's the best in the AFC. Who do you think are the best 2?
I have no problem saying that they're the best 2 teams in the NFL right now. I think I said it after the first week or 2 of the season, and I think until proven otherwise, I think that's the case. Now, listen, The Eagles have some kinks to work out. They're 4-0, but their passing offense is not clicking. A.J. Brown's not happy. Jalen Hurts didn't complete a pass in the second half last week, and they still won. And it's amazing. Saquon Barkley's averaging 3 yards a carry. He's been the focal point of defenses, and the run game has not been what it was last year through the first 4 games of the season, but they're still finding ways to win. Their defense is still outstanding. That's really, to me, the most consistent and the most, overpowering part of their team at the moment. Their defense is tremendous. They've also had some big special teams plays, obviously with the blocked field goal against the Rams and a blocked punt for a touchdown against the Bucs. So they're finding ways to win, which I think is the DNA of a championship team. In the AFC, I thought coming into the season the Ravens had the most talent, but they're banged up, and it just seems like there's something missing there. There's something off. The Bills are the best team in the AFC, I would say. Josh Allen's playing at it out of his mind. The Bills are not going to blow teams out. You've noticed, in their first few games, even last week, it was close. They were in a dogfight with the Saints, who are 0-4 deep into the second half. They were in a relatively tight game with the Dolphins before that. They're just gonna grind you down and do what they need to do to win. Beyond that, I think the top contenders, I would say in the NFC, I think Green Bay, Detroit, and the Rams are really the ones that I'm looking at as like the next group of teams that can, make some noise, and we'll see how they develop as the season goes on. But I think in terms of talent and in terms of experience and in terms of personnel, all that stuff, I think that they're the three top contenders outside of Philly. And the AFC to me is a little bit more interesting because, listen, I think that the Chiefs have found themselves, they've steadied themselves, and I think that they're going to be a factor when the year is over. I don't know if they're good, if they're a Super Bowl team again, but they're going to be heard from. You look at the Chargers, they're 3-1. They're very talented, but now they have some injuries along the offensive line, and it seems like the Chargers always kind of leave you wanting more. At least in the past. We'll see if Jim Harbaugh can get that out of them. And now you look, all right, the Steelers 3-1. How good are the Steelers? Are they, a legit playoff threat this year, or just a team that's going to make it and be out in the first round again? And the South, what's going to happen there? So I think by far the Bills are the best team, and we'll see what happens with the rest of the way.
I agree.
In the AFC, best team in the AFC, I should say.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, I think the Eagles are there. I don't like their matchup with a healthy Rams, and I don't like their matchup with a healthy Lions. I like them over a healthy Green Bay, but it's close. So yeah, I mean that's why I'm saying I think it's fascinating to me. All right, last question, Raiders question. They're going into a Colts team that is playing well, but I don't think they're a juggernaut. The Raiders have shown what they can do and what they can't do. Who wins on Sunday?
I am going to take the Colts at home, getting back after a tough loss on the road in L.A. I'm buying into the Colts as a legitimately good team. I think that, obviously, Daniel Jones had a couple of interceptions last week, and the offense wasn't as explosive as it looked the first 3 weeks of the season when I don't think they punted maybe twice in the first 3 weeks of the season or something like that. But listen, they are well coached. They have talent. Daniel Jones is very comfortable running that offense, and Shane Steichen's very comfortable operating with him as the quarterback. I think they're the favorites in the AFC South, even though the Jags are also 3-1 and looking improved. So I think I think it's a close game, but I think the Colts take it. I'll say 27-20 on Sunday.
There you go, everybody. Thanks, Matt.
Anytime.